Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Rafaela. I'm the editorial coordinator here at Architecture Hunter, and it's great to have you with us today as we reach the final day of our webinar week. I'd also like to take a moment to say a special thank you to those who have joined us throughout the week. We're very grateful for your presence and engagement. And today we close the week by looking forward. The theme is Rethinking Practice, Research and Innovation. Across 2 sessions, we'll explore how digital tools, computational thinking, behavioral research, and emerging technologies are influencing not only how we design, but also how we understand users, environments, and the future role of architects. Before we begin, just a quick note. All of our webinars are recorded and will be made available on our YouTube channel and website. So if you weren't able to attend some of the sessions earlier this week, we would like to revisit any of the conversations that will be available very soon. As always, please feel free to send your questions through the Q&A tab throughout the presentations. After each session, we'll have a live Q&A moderated by Amanda Fedber, founder and editor-in-chief of Architecture Hunter. To begin today's session, it's my pleasure to introduce our first speakers, Ken Clausen and My Lunsjö from 3XN and GXN. Ken is an associate at 3XN and head of digital practice. With a background in architecture and computational design, he leads the integration of digital tools, parametric modeling, and data-driven thinking across all stages of the design process. He has contributed to projects such as the Olympic House in Lausanne, the Sydney Fish Market, and SAP Garden Arena in Munich. My Lunsjö is an associate at GXN, behavioral design specialist, and an architect trained in both architecture and environmental psychology. Her work focuses on bridging research and practice throughout evidence-based design with a strong emphasis on health, well-being, and user experience. At GXN, she contributes behavioral insights that inform spatial flow, materiality, light, and form, particularly within projects focused on sustainability and circularity. Together, Ken and Mai bring complementary perspectives on how research, technology, and human behavior can actively inform architectural practice. So please join me in welcoming both of them.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi, can you hear us? You're sharing screen here?
Yes, we can see your screen.
That's great. Let's see, presenter mode.
Perfect. Just prepare a little bit and then we're ready.
Yes, at the moment. Okay.
Okay. Thank you for inviting us to share our insights and our perspectives about rethinking practice and why research and innovation, in our opinion, has a very important role to play when trying to challenge or test or explore the industry. Today, me and I want to combine our backgrounds and really talk about the importance of collaboration. The presentation today will be a mix between presentation and I guess a little bit of a conversation between me and I, where we are moving between methodology and practice. And the starting point for us before actually presenting is a short introduction from both of us, just to share a little bit about how we think and how we work.
All right, so if I start, my background is actually originally as a traditional sketching building architect, but then I have developed more and more into focusing on the human's experience in the environments that we create and design. And I have an additional master in environmental psychology. And now I focus a lot on both the field of environmental psychology and also to some extent neuroscience and how findings from research there can inform our practice. That's one of my legs. And then on the other one, I also work a lot with user involvement and how we can facilitate that sort of processes and also do field work to properly inform our projects. And yeah.
And I've been at the office for 12 years now. I'm a head of digital practice and really working in a split position between a machine room and boardroom. I'm a design solver and a problem solver in one person, and I really like to move between that world of the analog and digital, between geometry and design, and really trying to find that interplay between those keywords. My and I both work at a company called 3XN Architects and GXN Innovation, two companies founded in Denmark. 3XN is turning 40 this year, and GXN is an old teenager by now. So I think also that reflecting a little bit on that. I think we have a really good base for reflecting on all of the industry today, meaning that we have tested, we have experimenting with implementing architecture, innovation, and research into one loop. We have scale on the way, we have fails, and I think today we are in a position where our team is very agile, it's really flexible, and we can see that it's adding more surface models and more answers to the questions we ask. So that also means that we work across scales, we work across typologies, we work across different types of surface models, from behavioral design to low carbon design, from building design to product design. It's a little bit all over the place, which we like a lot. From the Olympic House in Lausanne, Switzerland, that we opened back in 2019. It's an office building, to our arena just opened here 1 year ago in the Olympic Park in Munich. And here a small cultural house in the northern part of Denmark, really close to the coast and to the sea. And to our newly opened Sydney Fish Market, also really addressing and linking to the waterfront. And here our latest, or our first actually, CLT building, so really experimenting with that materialization and fabrication methods. Also a project in Denmark, in Bornholm. And to our, I guess that is our latest pavilion for the Venice Biennale, where we were experimenting with 3 different types of organic materials, how they grow and how we can fabricate with them. And the last one here, more talking about scale. This is I guess the largest transformation project we've done today. Yeah, it's reusing 90% of the core structure and then adding an additional set of square meters to it, and really creating kind of a new type of skyscraper. But this is all front end. This is the images. This is all of the things that we share on Instagram and all of the other SoMe pages. This is what we like to talk about. This is the output. But behind the scenes, there's so much more. It's everything from testing and sharing tools within the office to exploring new ways of doing climate simulation. It's testing digital twins. It's testing new parametric models. So we're always trying to mix and match and try to find that innovation idea within all projects. Me and I are sitting in this office today. This is our Copenhagen office with the architecture school, the film school, and the opera house just behind there. And we have around 200 people worldwide today, working across 6 companies, from Sydney to New York, from London to Amsterdam, and then Stockholm and Copenhagen. So really trying to cover quite an big footprint. Our office in Copenhagen is actually a transformation. It was originally built to build boats, and then they could ship them out in the water. But today it is office spaces that really connects us with the water, with the outside, and it's actually a pleasure to go to work every day, because when you enter the space, we have this view, a view that has an open plan, and you really feel collaboration is happening in the office. And you can see that we're always testing and not forgetting the analog world as well. So we also always try to, in some way, test or explore the analog physical models as well in our process. But as the nerds we are, and as the lab rats we are, we also are using actually our building as a little digital twin. This is where we test our tools. This is where we calibrate our tools, but it's also where we actually have put sensors in the space to understand all of the climate conditions in this building here. And a lot of this we test and we learn and we explore, and maybe someday some of these techniques will find its way into practice again. To zoom out, we actually have a very classical setup, I would say. In the beginning, we have the project department, which is about basically competition to completion. We have the model workshop that is very much linked with the architecture school. We have our research lab or research team and the material laboratory. And then technology in some way are connecting all of us in good and bad ways. But we really see that is connecting the full workflow here. But I think what is key, and maybe a little bit of a stop on the presentation today, is this idea about rethinking practice. This is a list of background we have in the office at the moment. We have the behavioral psychologist sitting here, anthropologist, BIM manager, parametric designer. We are a little bit all over the place, and I think this is kind of what we see to add more skill sets to the conversation. Really have an impact. Like adding more skill sets really enhances collaboration. And when you ask one question in a project, you get so many different answers, and it really scales up the information and the methods we use in our projects.
Thank you. And can I take this one here? Sorry. So thank you for the introduction, Ken.
Yeah, it's a long one. But,
no, I think it was fine. And now we're actually going to talk a little bit. We want to be a little bit more specific with you to kind of explain how we actually work, how our everyday could look like. And I think in those times where there's so much focus on digital development and the digital tools, they evolve so fast. It's difficult for me, at least on the sideline, to keep track of everything we can do digitally. At the same time, I think we experience at the moment an even larger focus for us to actually remember the physical human experience. I mean, the experience of our bodies and the sensories without the digital layer on top of it. So therefore, I want to present one of our tools here that we work a lot with in the behavioral team, which is a kind of a mapping of our sites. We call it a sensorial mapping. But it's basically a field study where we go out at the very beginning of a project. Could be a master plan or a building site transformation. We go out to the site and we actually spend some time there. And by time, we mean a couple of days where we look through different times of the day. So the early morning to the late night, the rush hours, the day, the lunchtime. And then we kind of really observe what is going on and how do we feel at this space at this time. So it's kind of a snapshot of time about the human experience at the place that we're going to work with. And for this, we have quite an elaborated method at the moment where we look at different aspects. We both look at what type of people can we see at this space, what are they doing, what activities do we observe, so kind of the user registration. Then we also look at the physical properties of the site and how it looks and how it is as a physical environment. And also how those two combine into the more holistic experience. Could be aspects of safety during morning, during night, diversity and inclusion, the sense of place, and trying to understand the soul of the space in a way. And when we do this, what we do is actually that when we spend time, we make sure to gather a lot of insights. And those are represented by the Post-its here. And insights can be small things. It could be like, I'm standing here in this corner and it's really uncomfortable. It's very chilly. It's not nice to stand here. Or now I'm so tired of doing this field work. I really need to sit down, but I can see there's no non-commercial bench available. So I need to buy a coffee in order to be able to sit down. All those sort of small things that we observe, we note them down. And this is a knowledge about places that often get lost in projects. So we kind of find a method to grasp that. And then in the end, what we want to get out of all this is actually more tangible recommendations that we can take with us into the project. So often when we do this, or quite often when we work, we are in urban, dense context with a lot of stimuli going on. So this is kind of a very intense method for us to be so sensorially alert for a couple of days. It really requires some time, but it's also one of my favorite aspects with working here is go out and do this. So some examples of what we register are aspects such as, for instance, the flow lines. Where do people stop? Where do they walk and what tempo? And are there different tempo and are they clashing? What are people doing? Are they lingering at certain spots? That sort of thing. We look at different characteristics of the area and we subdivide them down into smaller sub-area characteristics. We look at soundscapes and acoustic properties. Also the experience if we walk through our site, like if you want to get from A to B and you cross over our site, what is actually then your experience? And then we look at the visual field when you walk fast. Sometimes on some sites it's like an obstacle race with bicycles and small things in the way, but here it's pretty open but not big variation, for instance. We look at body postures, how the sites support different variation in body postures. Colors, is there a balance between warm and cool colors? And the same with materials. Are they hard material, hard surfaces, soft materials? We'll look at the biophilic elements, like how are elements of greenery and water, stone represented at the sites, and are they, like here, used very strategically for kind of boundaries between private and public, or is it more a wild growing, or maybe lacking completely? All those sort of things. There's a lot more. I can't go through them all. And then we start to kind of gather them into concepts or clusters. Could be about providing posts or providing place. And we start to enhance them as drivers for design recommendations based on all those insights and all those small post-it notes that I talked about in the beginning. And this actually becomes quite a comprehensive experience for us, doing all this, first being out there and register, and then gather all the analysis. And often we prefer also to do this, not just the architectural team, but also together with the client, and maybe sometimes the representatives from the cities or the municipalities where we're working. So it's kind of the joint experiences. And we're very actually happy that when we do this, we can see that we have a very foundational understanding of the site and all the different sort of aspects and small stories about it. And then what we do is that we also pair this with the more digital aspects. So at the architectural studio at home, we have this sort of climate analysis, for instance, talking about human comfort at different places in the sites that we have. So for instance, that chilly corner, it might show in a simulation that there's actually a wind draft coming by there. That's why it's not so comfortable for it to stand there. So we kind of pair the experience very much with our digital tools.
And I think this really also highlights a little bit the importance of linking technology with the actual experience, because usually what we see is the left side here. It's simulations that are showing beautiful gradients, but what do they mean? So we really try in all of our simulation aspects to pair those with the experiences that My is mentioning here on the right side, for example. That orange means that this is a place for outdoor or events gathering, while some of the blue areas are maybe only for walking. So we always try to also look a little bit at the storyline of all of those technologies, or else it just ends up in that everyone can press play on a tool and see the gradients, but what do they actually mean? What do they actually do for the project?
And for us, it's a big help because we come home with a lot of experience and sensorial, observations that we have, and all of a sudden we can help explain them to us, and we can also investigate how we can improve them. So by design, for instance, we could try to improve that chilly corner, and we can see if it works by running new simulations. So it's a big help for us. In the end, what we want to gain from the whole process is actually this sort of design recommendations that we take out actually on cards. So sometimes we print them as physical cards. But what it does for us is that we can take all the positive aspects with an existing site that we want to make sure that we keep in the project. We can put them in here, and we can also take the things that we saw as possibilities for improvements and add those on the cards. And then when we start to design this area, we can really tap into those findings in kind of a co-design way.
Moving into our last chapter here, like how do we then use this in practice? We in the beginning talked about all of the skill sets, and that kind of diverse set of skill sets in your team is important. My just showed one of many interesting methodologies of how to work both in an analog way and in a digital way. So what does it mean to practice? And how do we work? Today we only have, but we have one project with us, and that's the newly opened Sydney Fish Market. It was a huge milestone for the whole team when it opened last week. And personally, for me, I think this really shows what it means to work with an informed design process and also collaboration. It has been a strong workflow between 3XN and DXN from day one, and together with all of the stakeholders, this output really looks and feels amazing. The building is kind of mixing experiences all over the place. It has the whole operation and the whole auction halls and everything below. Then on the ground or first level floor, we have the retail spaces, the cafes, all of the public cultural places, and then above we have offices. And all of this is linked together inside the timber roof. It took 10 years from design or vision to completion, I think this is a long time.
It is a long time.
A lot of things has happened in my life for the past 10 years. And I think it also addresses a little bit a paradox or an issue we are having at the moment. We try to put even more technology, even more smartness, or even more AI-driven tools up front in our design process. But architecture is a patience game. When we started out with this in 2016, we set out visions, but they honestly first have to be relevant from now, 10 years after and forward. So it's going to be interesting to see how the spaces work. Do the users embrace the spaces?
Yeah.
Does the quality of those performative things we have added to the project, do they actually work? So now it will stand the test of time, but it's interesting to see that we work in somehow that delay mode in architecture.
And when you said just open, it was last week, the opening.
So it's pretty new,
Super British.
The fish market, the new city fish market, is located a good walk from the Opera House and the city center at Blackwater Bay, and it's replacing the old fish market because of square meter issues, logistic and operation issues. So they wanted a new fish market to kind of continue the journey of in that area. One key symbol or diagram or question for us from very early on was this question about the architecture or the building itself. Can it in an urban fabric become a connector between a promenade and city scale to park and water? So it plays with scale. Looking at it from the more urban view, it really connects with the park and the water and maintains a certain scale, at least in the vertical direction. And then when you move closer to the building, you start like getting an impression of maybe only one elevation. You are beginning to feel all of these small public places that has been added, and all of these interesting small pockets. You can begin to really understand the building and the texture. And then when you get into the building, even though it's really, really big, you can get these intimate feelings and spaces. The view out to the water, small restaurants there, and then the roof really tucked in, doesn't have that big distance from the functions below.
And when
Oops.
Like this.
Yeah.
And this is just to relate back to this type of project. They definitely, for us, it's not about shape, but it starts actually with a very profound understanding of the context and everything that's there. And this is just some of the initial studies just to show that it's been a profound understanding relating to the context ahead of this.
Yeah, basically here the fish market still only exists in an outline. There's so much other things that is being researched and analyzed before we actually start our projects.
Exactly. And one of the things was that we very early on had this idea that this should not just be a fish market with operations, but it should also be a public attractor, a new destination within Sydney. And therefore, this combination of the operation, the traditional operation, and then kind of taking this typology and turn it into also a leisure attractor was something quite new here. And something where the behavioral knowledge also is quite keen, because what we could see when we started, I mean, it sounds so nice in the idea, right? But then you get started and you can see that it quite easily becomes a conflict between territories, between the operations. They're used to work in a certain way, and it's about efficiency, and they don't want leisure tourists in the way, basically. So it's about making the architecture work in a way with those two types of territories. They can keep their functionality without disturbing each other, but still with a lot of contact. And here we worked a lot with the split levels that you explained in the images, where things are separated between floors, but still in visual contact. And this concept of separating the territories, but at the same time have them connecting to each other, has been a concept throughout the building. And here are some of the images where you can really see it. And normally the public do not have access to this type of fish auction in the same way.
This is the auction hall.
I didn't say that. Yeah, that's true.
No, okay, you said that. Okay.
No, I didn't say it. This is the auction hall, yes, where the auctioning of the fish takes place. And around it, all the way, you have restaurants, you have retail, but you can also look down and get a very close view of what's going on, but still without creating any dangerous situations or compromising anyone's territory.
Yeah, and speaking about the project, another big feature of this project is the roof. And this roof actually has a very interesting play between that spatial experience below that we have now talked quite a lot about, but also how it addresses and are combined with all of the climate conditions from above. The roof and the structure, it's a glulam timber structure with steel joints, steel columns, and then these skylights above that almost looks like fish what's called fish shells, so to say.
Fish shells, yeah.
And starting up on such a project and the roof, we set out some guidelines that we used always as reference points throughout the project. So from a performance point of view, it was important to figure out how do we collect water, how do we create energy production, how do we think about a modular assembly principle, but also from a more form-oriented thing, how do you adjust to the program levels below, and how do you, for example, enhance views, like that combination between form and feeling, and then the performance needed really to go in tandem together. And one of the key things in this story here is water and water collection.
Dramatic image.
Yeah. I've been using it for years, and now it just it's stuck in the presentation. But basically, when it rains, and especially in Sydney, it rains a lot. So the roof is not only curving for the spatial and the form expression here; it actually curves because of a very important issue or challenge with water. So we at the beginning set out kind of a three-step parameter setup for our rainwater, like guide the rainwater, collect the rainwater, and then reuse the rainwater. And how we usually approach this when we now enter a little bit more the technology and digital scene, and remember this is back in 2016, so a lot of new stuff has come to market afterwards, but we just decide to say a raindrop has a point. It's an XYZ point, and then we just let it drop. And we always start very simple and diagrammatic to really just see, are there any small things that we can use in our building or in our design? So here we are testing how you are collecting the points, how you are guiding the points, so really testing different shapes. And when we have that simplified model ready, we apply it to the actual surface design and the design process. And here we are experimenting with many different shapes to see how the points are moving, aka the raindrops should move on the surface. And what we were aiming for was two low points that are shown here, where around the blue, the concentrated blue, that's where all of the water in the fish market goes. And then it's a reuse for cooling and for cleaning and maintenance in the building. And when applying those skylights above, I have marked out here the two places where the low points are. It kind of just links in and blends in with the architecture. So it's not an additional performative big system that sits on top. It's blended in with the architecture from the beginning. And as me already introduced, with a lot of simulation and a lot of the tools we do, we always do a pit stop basically in the projects. We take some of the key ideas out, and then we start like formalizing them into new methodologies, new tools that can be shared for the office, so it can be reused in projects afterwards. And this can come in advanced tools to simple tools, but also booklets like this, where you really show different types of using climate simulation tools in our projects. Yeah, and when speaking about this roof here, I guess I have to continue a little bit here because there's so many stories. But this roof here was quite interesting, and the design in general, because it really played with scales, both as we talked about before with the experience, but also with the actual design of the structure. So from far away, you have this kind of large scale approach to your design, and we kind of talked about it before with how we addresses the surface with the water simulation. But when you zoom in, you begin to also experience the grid timber structure and the joints. So somehow they are all linked together.
Oh, can I say something on that one?
Yeah.
Because you can really see how it responds to the context here from in the large scale, and then when you move into the medium and small scale, you can see those sensorial, tactile, warm experience of the wood, which really goes from this more digital, shapy, landscapey roof to something warm that you want to be close to. And also the pattern creates almost like an ornament, you could say, in the experience of the ceiling from the inside.
In some way, it kind of all links together. You start with like the big scale, and then slowly the pattern subdivides down. But we have that key grid that always connects everything together. But when you turn on these more design and digital glasses on the project, we had a big discussion about the starting point in this project, because from surface design to detail design, it's a quite big distance. And sometimes we thought that, yes, now the water simulation, it's perfect, it works. but it was creating a lot of problems for our timber structure. So it became a really integrated and informed process between all of these different starting points. We decided to start with the beam, basically. We knew the material, we knew the cross sections, and we already had a lot of data about the texture and how it would look and be perceived in space. And then we add a little bit more simplified tools to the process, a little bit similar to the simulation tools. We start simple. So here we just draw on 2D a beam, and then it projects up to the surface, and then it begins to optimize itself in the space and in the configuration. So we can begin to see some beams are smaller and some beams are larger. Suddenly it begins to be that kind of structure as we talked about with the hierarchy of elements. And what was very important for us was always to be aware about the material we used and how many types we had in the project, to minimize number of types and really be in control over the geometry and the structure. And this also meant that we actually, quite funny here, this is a person, and this is the height of the structure down here in the right corner. So it's quite a big structure. Maybe the impression is not really shown on the images, but it's big scales here, large scales. But basically, the image here talks about the hierarchy of the structure, and that we don't over-dimension beams just for the aesthetical purpose. We have really optimized the structure to ensure that we're using as little material as possible to keep up these big spans in the project. And every time we did an option, we always returned back to pages like this, where we have in the left side, we have all of the data on the quantities, and then also the outline of all of the types. So always linking those scales together. But funny enough, when you talk about the digital, we are back to the analog again, because you need to go away from that annoying screen sometimes. It's very difficult, especially with this project, to understand scale. You can zoom in and out, and those structures just looks like a little small design piece, but the scale in this project is enormous. So beginning to get feedback from real-world manufacturers and how they will assemble the system is super, super valuable to our process. And this we then take back into our models. We begin to look at, for example, the joints. How can they be kind of in a sequence, connecting the beams together, because you cannot put all beams down at the same time. And all of this you only learn from moving into practice, or as Mye explained, moving to your sites, get the feeling of the spaces. And here just showing a little bit off, but this was some of our latest models, where we really are able to have all of the data, all of the geometry in one model, meaning that if somebody asked if they wanted all of the beams and the length in the project, we could support with that. And this kind of iteration between design model, technical model, and also basically just a design that mix in between is highly important in our process, and especially for this project here. And here maybe when you see the model, like what is scale, it's so abstract. So getting out of that computer screen is it's really important, both professionally and private, but that's another discussion. And here just some snippets of how before the skylights were applied on top, like how the structure actually really flies in just around and are capturing the spaces below. And also what you spoke about, the hierarchy between all of the elements, like we have the cruciform columns that goes in and linked to some of the structures, and then you have that system that suddenly are slowly appearing in the spaces.
And then the daylight, protected from the sunlight.
Of course. The skylights are rotated so that daylight goes in, but PV cells are smartly placed so that we are, of course, creating a lot of energy that can be used for the building. Of course.
So all this going on with this very fancy roof that can do a lot of things, but also it could work actually quite rational for the more like public life at the building, or the user experience of the building. So we can see, if you look at it from, not from this angle, but from above, it's a very rational grid.
It was very key for us to have that 2D orientation of a 3D project constantly. You cannot work in 3D without having your 2D with you.
And this was, because it was also a user experience challenge with this project, because it was so big, as you said, the scale, it's huge. So how to kind of make it down to a human scale was one of the focus areas. And here actually the roof was very beneficial, because it could be subdivided into zoning. And as soon as you start to subdivide something into zoning, you could start to think about different types of experience in a sense of modular programs. like here. And there you can talk about breaking it down and start to program the whole building with various types of experiences, which really creates this kind of flexible way of working that can adapt also, because like Ken said, it developed over 10 years.
Yeah.
So to have a user experience concept that is very flexible and can adapt is also very important.
Yeah, and I think also the user experience doesn't need to be exactly the functions here. It's more the experience we talk about, and that's what we want to combine, because the fish market has a big footprint. The roof is 200 meters by 100 meters.
Yeah.
So a lot of experiences and local conditions can almost appear in the building.
Exactly, and the result, we hope, now, I have yet to come and see it, but we hope that it's very much this lively ecosystem where everything mix and match and goes in different levels underneath this, gathered underneath this very nice roof.
Happy you say that. And I think to not run out of time here, I think this could maybe be a little bit of a closing statement from us before going to the outro here. This discussion that me and I are trying to set up here, or maybe more conversation between behavior and digital, really shows in this roof here. You have in some way that roof that are adjusting to the spaces, to the program and everything below. And then all of that is also really linked to that modular system and that thinking of not having a billion of different types of there, but really having that smart thing that links the experience basically in space with the construction on top. And that link became kind of a key for us in the project, and where we really see that adding skill sets to your team really benefits in both short term and long term in that process here. Okay. And here just a couple of snippets of the process we went through with that, the kind of modular approach of having one type, and how that then could be, again, back to the grid and plan, how that could be reorganized constantly when changing the geometry. And here you really get the feeling of how the roof curves when you section it different places. When you section it different places. And here in the end, quite interesting to see that on the left side, we had 4 at a time skylights coming in, and then a crane put 1 at a time up on the roof, really like a simple assembly system. And then slowly, together with the structure, it was just kind of following a little bit of a parallel timeline here. And here, just to finalize the project and a little bit the presentation, the last piece clicking into the puzzle, and maybe also here it really reveals something about scale and the dimensions here, that you can get lost up on that roof at the moment, because like when you move around, where's the staircase down? So quite interesting to see how everything in some way, the investment we put up in front with a lot of the research, a lot of the technologies really pays off also in the long run.
And then I think we have a few closing words, but I think we covered today very much the skill set, methodology, and practice. And for each of those, we have a little takeaway point, you could say. So I think for skill set, we wanted to demonstrate today that architects alone aren't enough, we believe, because those meaningful outcomes are shaped by this approach by diverse disciplines, like we've spoken about today. Then we also think that the methodology, the more we dive into all those advanced digital tools, the more we also need to balance that with diving into the human body and the sensorial experience and going a little bit back to that, so that the human experience can be strengthened by digital tools.
And not only written in a prompt.
Exactly. It's very important for us to develop just as much on the physical side. And then this paradox that you started talking about a bit, this time paradox, the buildings takes years to complete. It's quite slow game, but at the same time, I never experienced a studio workflow that evolved as rapidly as it does at the moment with new technology rising, and also the need to constantly upskill ourselves to kind of
upskill all of the employees, but also upskilling like the industry. What is the guideline at the moment for young architects or young students out there? It's very difficult to point for the students if you can't even point yourself at the moment. So kind of that methodology is somehow the core structure here at the moment.
And I feel not even we know where the profession is going.
Which I really like it. I like that when it's up in the air, but it can be difficult to create a business model if you don't know where things are going. So
I think that was it for us. Thank you very much for your attention.
Hi Ken, hi Mai. Thank you so much for the presentation. That was so interesting.
Happy to hear.
Well, now we have a few questions here. We're not going to have much time because we have the next speaker soon. But the first one is, do you feel clients are becoming more receptive to data-driven environmental decisions, or does education still play a major role?
I definitely feel like clients are start to ask for a lot of those services that we provide, in a sense that they're not just interested in how the building look and function, they're also interested in how they perform on different aspects, from both the environmental, but also the user experience, and could be aspects such as, for instance, productivity or well-being within a building.
Yeah, but also think a lot of the clients today, they ask for one typology or one function, but suddenly in 10 years' time, that function maybe will change.
Yes.
So we also are beginning to test out more versions. Can it go from hospitality to a cultural building?
Yes.
I think some of those aspects also require that agility in your process, that you can begin to inform it for many different experiences.
Yes, because everything we design needs to be able to adapt so much for the future. It's very true.
Yeah.
And especially because I imagine that they already know what you guys are known for. So like I feel that probably like when they get to you, this is kind of what they're expecting already, right? Like a data-driven information. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so, but maybe also because there was something that flickered on the screen in the beginning, so I didn't highlight it that much because I got a little bit out of contact. But I think what is also relevant here is that we have been trying to solve that big question about integrating research into practice and practice into research for many years. And it takes time to develop that kind of method from like how do that work in projects, but also how does it work in a business model. So I think it takes time to mature that and figure out how to balance between people who need to maybe step away from that never-ending deadline zone, and then moving a little bit more into research where the outcome is not 100% sure yet. We are testing and failing on the way, and that mix and that model takes a little bit of time to mature. It works, and sometimes it doesn't. So it's always part of a kind of an evolution in here.
Yeah.
There is a specific question about the fish market project. For the Sydney project, was the client who decided to integrate behavioral and environmental design, or was a decision that was made internally?
It goes both ways here. There's always a brief, but there's also ambitions from both sides. And as said, when we started to understand from the earlier analysis models that Me was showing, the scale of this would be quite big. And you cannot put such a big project on the planet and not think about all of those additional features in this year. So I think what became quite interesting for us was how could all of those performative and more technical, usually big systems, be integrated within the architecture. And I think that became quite interesting with the interplay between us and the client and basically all stakeholders, that you suddenly don't have pipes on top of the roof. How can you integrate that into the system? And that became a narrative basically throughout the project.
And we love to have very close client collaborations where we can have a lot of dialogue, because in that way we can always test ideas and we can say, oh, have you thought about adding this program? Or have you, so we can always test. We have so many ideas, and definitely not all of them go through into the final building, but some of them does. And we can always test them with the client.
But I think here actually quite a lot of them did. It's really one of them where you can, from 16 and on, say that, okay, the vision from 10 years ago, I can point at that now in the building. That's quite impressive.
There's also a very good question. I think it would be very interesting for you guys to elaborate it a little bit more. What motivated the creation of GXN Innovation, and how has embedding a research-focused entity within GXN changed the way innovation and sustainability are approached in practice?
Yeah, you take that. I think I will answer differently from you. So I think it would be nice with a split answer here. Let's see what you say first.
I think kind of the purpose with the GXN, as I wasn't here when it was founded, but as I understand it, it was also to kind of create this moment, because we say that often when we actually work as sketching architects, we have deadlines, we have, quite a condensed design periods also. So somehow also have this space where we can also be more in depth and explore things. So that kind of protects GXN's time a little bit to actually be able to go more in depth. And then at the same time, the collaboration with GXN makes it also possible to constantly test ideas that arrive from this more profound, more research based approach, and really test it out quite specifically. Experiment into
if I have to answer this a little bit similar, but it's also different, is that when GXN was founded almost these 18, 19 years ago, it was because at that time the architects didn't really have that close of a connection to materialization, fabrication, and that whole green layer of things. So that's actually why it started, like to have that one or two persons just researching only in that. When I started, it was like 5 years old, so we were still basically a research institution, really not linked with 3XN. But when I stand here talk today, I don't feel that we are two companies anymore. No. I think a little bit in the business model, but you can really see also how 3XN is affecting the way GXN works. So that kind of mixture seems to work quite well now, that if I have an interesting technology project, it doesn't matter where you're from. It's really about the skill sets now, and offer these different business models that I keep referring to, because it takes time to make space for that and room for that in your process. Yeah.
The next question is still a bit about this topic, because someone is asking, for offices that want to integrate research in a meaningful way rather than just symbolically, where would you suggest they begin?
I think it's very good to start with this multidisciplinary approach, to hire someone from another discipline, which comes with a lot of knowledge, a bit from the behavioral sciences or other things, to really start create a diverse team. I think that it's quite difficult for architects per se to figure out in the jungle of research available in a specific field, like to dig out research, whether it's articles or knowledge, and then start to elaborate how to integrate that in design, if they are on, in a regular sketching phase where they have deadlines and much focus in the production of drawings and other materials. But having another discipline can help bridge that. But I'm sure you have another idea.
No, I think I'm more like a brutal direct in here. For example, when you talk about technology, all of the processes we do never starts with the technology. It starts with the idea, the question, and the concept. So I think before even figuring out if you want a research group or team, maybe try to figure out what questions do you want to answer, and are they within the scope of your like day-to-day work, or is it something that sits outside of that scope? And then you need to figure out, are they then answering questions? Because if you come to work every day and there's no questions to answer, then it's just, as the question also is hinting towards, then it just becomes kind of a title and a name and pages on a slideshow. But the integration part also requires that you answer something, and that's what GXN also is more focused on today, answering specific questions that goes back into practice and not only stays as research.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
Interesting. And a final question, as a global firm rooted in Scandinavian values, how do you prevent human-centric design from becoming a transferable template rather than a locally negotiated process?
Yeah, that's something we talk about a lot, actually, because we're very often not local where we work. So the way, and that's one of our big challenges. The way we do it is often we have collaborations with local, different types of user-focused collaborations. But what we also do is, for instance, when we have our sensorial mapping, what we always make sure is that we think actually it's very good to have a mix of people being at the site for the very first time. So someone completely new to the city that doesn't know the context, they can register. And also we always want to have ideally 2 or 3 local people with us to do the sensorial, because it's always very different. The kind of the observations we make. So that is one way to always collaborate with someone that is locally known of the site, I would say.
Yeah, maybe if I should talk more from, it's maybe not 100% answering the question, maybe reflecting a little bit on this, also moving maybe to the end, I could imagine here. This idea about rethinking practice and all of the things we are trying to say today. Our office at the moment has, I think we are around 30 nationalities worldwide. It's up there, like 25 to 30 nationalities. It's quite a big, I can't remember at the Christmas breaks, usually there's like a song being played from each country. So that we are up in that size, and that's quite a big percentage of different nationalities in the office. And I think what we have noticed is that kind of different cultures and backgrounds also are a little bit affecting and changing in a good way all of the other things in-house.
Definitely
So I
does.
think a key thing that maybe Mue is heading to is not only to take your knowledge outside of the house. One of the most important things that we are dealing with inside the house, and it's not always successful, is knowledge sharing, ensuring that if you have an office in Sydney, then you need 1 or 2 persons that at one time can begin to do some of these sensorial mappings as well. So it's also important that you look at us as a global organization where maybe the Death Star, the mothership is in Copenhagen, but a lot of the knowledge should be accessible all over the world. It should not be that when you are in our Sydney office, you can only get like that part of it. So a lot of the things that we do behind the scenes that no one sees is also trying to really knowledge share within the office in many different layers.
And you have many offices around the world, right? How many?
6 offices, with Copenhagen being the biggest one. And then, Sydney, I will say all offices has in some way started because of projects, which means that instead of traveling back and forth to Sydney on a kind of a constant basis, it's not doing anything good for many. It's better to have local offices that can begin to also mature the area and see are there any other opportunities there. So we don't need to travel, but we then can knowledge exchange also online a little bit more.
But we always almost always also collaborate with local architect.
And that's a
site.
given.
Yeah, so we're
You're
very
right.
high in collaboration, I would say.
Yeah, we always try to team up when we go abroad. Like we have these good friends in different countries where we have shared a little bit the IP, basically, the knowledge sharing. So I think you're right that is also part of it.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we don't have time for more questions, but I would love to thank you so much, both of you, for the presentation, for your time, and I hope you enjoy too this exchange with the audience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much, Ken and Mai, for sharing your work and insights with us. And now it's time to introduce our final speaker of the week, Neil Leach. He's an architect, professor, and co-founder of Digital Futures. Neil is an UK-based architect and academic who currently directs the Doctor of Design program at Florida International University and has taught at many of the world's leading architecture schools, including the Architectural Association, Harvard, Columbia, and Cambridge. He's the co-founder of Digital Futures, a global educational platform, and a former researcher at NASA, where he worked on 3D printing technologies for the Moon and Mars. Neil is the author of more than 50 books on architectural theory and digital design, and his current research focuses on artificial intelligence and its impact on architecture. His recent book, Architecture in the Age of Artificial Intelligence, explores how AI is transforming design thinking and architectural practice. So please join me in welcoming Neil.
Thank you. Hold on a second. Okay. Let me put my video on. Yeah. It's good morning from Miami. That's where I'm based now. Let me share my screen. So yeah. So this book that you mentioned, the second edition anyway, came out last summer. It came out actually in 2021 in a white cover. It's now coming out in translation, and it comes out in Italian very soon. It just came out in Arabic and a few other languages. But since I last gave a talk, which was before Christmas, but right before Christmas, I was in Tokyo and Hong Kong, and since then. Certain things have developed. I've been working on another book, which is called The AI Design Revolution, with 3 colleagues, where we're looking at the question of the impact of AI on the office from 3 different perspectives. Myself as a theorist, Daniel Bologen as a progressive design, an AI designer, Wan Yu He as a somewhat developer of AI software for architects, and Theodoros Galanis, part of the infrared team, as somebody who's looking at environmental control systems. And I think what I would say just briefly is to say that, there are a number of things on the horizon right now. We have a session, we have, I think the two issues are agentic AI that's been part of mainstream AI is now coming into architecture. We have a session on digital futures on the 7th of February where Daniel Bolajan is going to talk about his new platform that he's launching. And the other thing is spatial intelligence, which is a crucial part of things. Let me just put the light on a second. Those things on the horizon, I'm not really talk about them today, but what I want to do is just maybe look beyond the obsession with the tools. I mean, which is understandable among architects, to look along the bigger picture, because there is a bigger picture. And it's in some ways it's a bit frightening. I spend my whole time listening to podcasts and things that have been made by the leaders in the world of AI. And what's so interesting right now is one of the concerns is almost all the AI has been written by AI, which is kind of like the point at which we enter into the question of super intelligence. Anyway, I've put my Instagram address there, which is where I post all my things. I'm calling this lecture Alien Intelligence because in order to distinguish AI from human intelligence, it's a different form of intelligence, a fundamentally different form of intelligence, a mechanical form of intelligence as opposed to the biological intelligence of the brain, but it is a form of intelligence nonetheless. And I use the term alien just to point out that it is fundamentally other and to prevent people from anthropomorphizing this intelligence. But I think that it's every bit as good as human intelligence. And I think it's personally, I think it's surpassed human intelligence. What I'm showing you here is, I mean, Sora 2, this is a bit old now, it's from October. But this is the kind of thing that's coming out increasingly. We are seeing forms of AI that really have understanding what the world is like in terms of intuitive physics. When we come to spatial intelligence, it'll be even more effective. Anyway, let me just kind of show you a few clips of this. This is if you put a figure into this, it kind of brings the whole thing into scale and things very well. So I'm using Sam Altman, who becomes a kind of like an estate agent to go and show us around certain properties. Let me show you a few clips.
All right, welcome to my new place. It was designed by Zaha Hadid Architects, so everything flows, no straight lines anywhere. The living room opens right up to the view. You can see the city and the hills from almost every angle. In the kitchen, the island is cast in...
This actually caused consternation in the Zaha office because everyone was kind of contacting. Can I see this building? People were taken in by it. It was so realistic. And here's Gary.
Welcome to my new place in Miami. Frank Gehry designed it. You can feel it the moment you walk in. Everything moves, everything flows. Out here on the balcony, the whole city and the ocean just wrap around you. The staircase is like a piece of sculpture. I still catch myself.
And here's Sam Altman showing us his latest car.
This is something I've been waiting to show you. It's a radically futuristic Jaguar sports car designed in collaboration with Zaha Hadid Architects. The whole front is one continuous curve, no seams, just light and air sliding past. Look at this roof.
And then Kareem Rashid.
I think it's something I'm incredibly excited to show you. This is Ferrari's vision of the future, a concept car designed by Kareem Rashid. It's all electric, wrapped in a color-shifting skin, and every line flows like liquid. The headlights are digital ribbon.
I don't know if you noticed that building in the background is designed by his brother Hani Rashid, who was a colleague of mine when I was teaching at Columbia, New York. Anyway, let me just kind of maybe make some comments about this world of AI, just some general comments. When I first started working about this in 2017 or so, nobody was talking about AI, nobody at all. And by the time when I got a contract, and I think about about 2019, I was working on it, and I wrote to my publishers and I said, this is a bit disconcerting, this world of AI, because it is absolutely incredible. At the same time, it's getting terrifying. And if I could, every day, I'm more and more impressed by AI, but I'm also more and more terrified. Anyway, so I wrote to my publishers and persuaded them to go and produce not one book, but two books, one with a white cover about the positive side of AI and one with a black cover about the kind of the dark side, the Black Mirror side of AI. And I'm about to start writing that book right now. It's kind of been written. It's kind of been written. When I first posited this, I came up with the idea of The Death of the Architects as a title, which seemed outrageous at the time. Outrageous. But what I want to point out today is that offices will shrink, AI will take over jobs. It is obvious, and I will show the data on it. This is Sam Altman doing some parkour. Everyone was upset that I was celebrating Sam Altman, so I showed him sort of falling over as well. Anyway, It's not that AI is evil. It's basically a tool, um, and like any tool, it really depends on who uses it and for what. There is this thing called agentic AI, which I'll talk about, but it's not really agency because we control it. At the moment, AI doesn't really have any proper agency, and as such, it is the person in charge. I can use a kitchen knife to cut up my vegetables. But I can also use a kitchen knife to murder you. So it's not about the knife itself, it's about who's using it for what. At the same time, what I think really is that AI is the danger of AI really comes out of how amazing it is and how increasingly amazing it's going to be getting. So I want to kind of present to you a kind of a broader picture today of what AI is doing, not focusing on the tools so much, but really looking at what's behind the tools, something that most architects don't really look at. So this is my view of AI. It's like a yin-yang sign. It's white and it's black, but interestingly, within the white, there is a black circle. And that's my point, is that the problem, the dark side of AI is precisely because it is so good in many ways. So this was the first book that came out, the white cover book, which was immediately out of date. It came out in December 2021. There was a slew. That was the first of a series of books on AI and architecture in the modern age that came out. And they were all out of date, but within a few months because of developments. First of all, we got diffusion models, then we got ChatGPT and so on. So I then produced this second version, came out last summer, and that's probably also out of date to some extent. But the world is moving on, and the Black Book is going to come next. So I want to just simply outline this to keep this simple, keep it to 6 key points in terms of my presentation today. So, I think just to sort of echo in some senses what's been said already, it is about data, automation, and optimization. But there is another world, which is agentic AI that is coming in, which is something very, very different to this and is going to transform everything. Wan Yu He is already working on it. She can't disclose it because it's a part of under an NDA. Daniel Bolajan and Theodoros Galanis are all working on agentic AI. That is the thing that's going to come in and totally transform and leave behind generative AI that's been dominating so far. But this is really the slightly boring kind of world. It's not going to be based on the kind of stuff that I showed you just now. They're just games. It's kind of like toys in some senses. It's going to be a very kind of hardline way of approaching things. And I know that because Wan Yu He has been working with me. I supervised her doctorate at FIU, and also I'm supervising a PhD with her right now in Tongji in Shanghai. And she came out of OMA. And actually, to be honest, OMA is responsible for all this because of how inefficient that office was. She was so frustrated with the inefficiencies that she decided to set up a company looking at AI. XCool is the name of her company. XCool means XCoolHus. And it's now, I think it's probably overtaking Autodesk as the leading AI software developer in the world. But just to give you a kind of glimpse of what happens here, this is a project that they won against 200 other architects in China for a museum. And it's totally generated out of the data. Totally generated out of the data. In yacht design, that's what they do these days. They don't sketch things. It's all coming out of the data. The hulls have been designed in this way. So you see these rectilinear blocks on the right-hand side that have been eroded, or they're kind of form finding based on the logic of generative AI. And what we'll be getting is the forms that eventually emerge are kind of these Gary-like forms that are optimizing the process. That is the kind of thing that's going to work, and actually it's going to be transformed into the work of generative AI. That is going to be coming in the literally in the next few weeks, next 2 weeks, I think, the first ever platform for architects. So the interesting thing about this project is that it was the first project totally generated by generative AI. Matthias Telkamper likes to think that he's 3 steps in Michigan with that. No, this is the first ever project that's done this, and it's done it in an incredible way. It's been built. That's the point. It was built. It was completed in 2024. You might not like it. Doesn't matter. The point is, this is the first generative AI building to have been constructed. So I just realized I didn't actually optimize my video here. I hope this is not lagging. Anyway, we've also seen platforms like Infrared City. This is Theodore Skalanis's territory. This is old-fashioned because it's not going to be after the fact testing. When we have agentic AI, it's going to be generating as a process. The whole design will be conforming to, as it were, the results of the agentic AI findings. And when it comes to construction, this is something that is already being done by Wan Yu He. At the moment, construction is hopelessly slow and uncoordinated in architecture. A building takes so long, so long. What they've done in China is to produce buildings in 16 weeks, and they've done it partly by using DFMA into the process as a kind of a way of digitally tagging the whole logic, but also to use prefabricated construction. They kind of talk about it in terms of Lego, but think about this not as Lego, but as a hugely sophisticated prefabricated components that are conforming in many ways. The key thing I think right now is speeding up the process. Foster and Partners, that's what they're focusing on. They're not interested in mid-journey. They can design already. They want to basically use AI, using surrogate models and so on, to speed up the design process. So this is a comment that came back from 2020 or something, a long time ago. Already developers asking architects to use AI because it's going to increase the return on investment. There's obviously, humans make mistakes. AI is getting better and better and better. It doesn't make mistakes so much. But at the same time, they're now beginning to say, well, hold on a second, if AI is doing all the work for you, how I don't need to pay you so many fees. So that's the key question. How do you justify your fees in a world of AI? So the city of the future, what does the city of the future look like? Is it going to be something kind of science fiction like this, like something hugely scientific and futuristic and so on? Or is it going to look something more like this? And this is LA, where I lived until last year. Really, I mean, there'll be a few new buildings, but the city of the future will look pretty much like the city of the today. But what will happen is everything is going to be retrofitted with the latest technology, especially the infrastructure. All the traffic is going to be controlled by AI. And that is the way that it's going to go. I don't think it's going to look like something out of science fiction. Interestingly, back in 2009, I published guest edited an issue of AD on digital cities, and all the architects. This is on the front cover. You can see the work of Zahedid architects. Patrick Schumacher wrote an article about parametricism. This was his first ever article about parametricism, and he was arguing it's going to be all about this form, these kind of parametric forms. Well, we haven't seen that. There's been no parametric city. It hasn't existed. At the same time, the really interesting article was actually the final article by Ben Bratton, an article called iPhone City. And what he argued is that the iPhone is going to transform the city, or the way we use the city, more than any architect. And of course, he's absolutely right. And of course, based on that, we've got Uber cars and God knows what. The city has been changed not by form, but by informational processes, and that is going to be the key driver in the future. So it is you get these cars. I mean, I think this is part of the whole logic also, I would say, of spatial intelligence. This is why Fei Li it was really pushing 3D AI right now, and that's what spatial intelligence is. We have it ourselves. We operate in a world of 3D, but at the moment, AI is quite a long way behind it. How do you train the systems to be aware of their environment, in effect, to produce the real world? That's precisely the push that's going on right now. Interesting, there's a theory about cars that basically says that eventually we're going to be banned from driving. These are going to get more and more efficient, much better than we are, and eventually insurance premiums are going to go up for human drivers. It'll become so expensive, we'll just not bother, and we'll just use self-driving cars, and eventually we'll be banned from driving because we're not as good as self-driving cars. If you've ever used one of these, Waymo, unbelievable. This is the future. I'm absolutely, totally convinced. You can see how it's kind of modeling the road ahead here in a kind of this is a digital model. What's happening? It's recording everything. So this is the future in many ways. Spatial intelligence along with domestic robots. The buildings of the future. The same question. What will the buildings of the future look like? Are they going to look like this? Well, maybe a few of them are going to look like this. But this, if I were to point to the most futuristic building that we have, I'd probably say this one. This is Ali Malkawi's research center at Harvard, where I used to teach. Here he's basically got he's retrofitted this entire traditional building with all these sensors. They're using a digital twin with a kind of AI brain, as it were, in the attic, optimizing the performance of this building. This, I think, is what we should be thinking about, not sexy forms, but informational processes that are going to transform everything. If I could give you one example of that, it would be this. What does an Uber taxi look like? And people like people are kind of asking, what will the architecture of AI look like? Well, I think it's not a question about necessarily what it looks like, it's how it behaves and so on. So the question ultimately is what does an Uber car look like? And frankly, an Uber car looks just like an ordinary car because it is an ordinary car. It's not the form that's different, it's the way that it operates, the way it harnesses AI processes to allow you to order an Uber car and so on and so on. So the positive side of AI, the white side of the yin yang, as it were. This is Musk basically saying we're all cyborgs, and we are. There's a form of co-intelligence, to use a term that's been used, but more recently, to how we operate with these systems as a kind of a prosthesis, as it were, to our imagination, incredibly enhancing what we can do. And perhaps the most extraordinary thing has been OpenAI, something that has really changed the world in which we operate. Just to mention that when it came out, nobody was predicting it was going to be as good as it was. Least of all, OpenAI. ChatGPT, when it came out, no one was predicting it. On November the 1st of 2022, it came out on the 30th of November. On November the 1st, there were no plans to release ChatGPT. Halfway through the month, Sam Altman called a meeting. Said that the time they were working on GPT-4 that was spewing out hate speech, it wasn't ready to be released. It needed to be tidied up, and they couldn't release that. But Sam Altman called this meeting and said, we've got to release something. So they kind of said, well, why don't we make a chatbot? Why don't we wrap one of these large language models up in a kind of user-friendly interface and release it? So they took GPT 3.5 and they did that. And the way they described it in the office, they said, this is no big deal. This is no big deal. It's just an internal research preview, and we just want to test out the market. And of course, wham, when it happened, it just transformed everything. And there were jokes going around the office, no big deal, huh? Internal research preview, because it transformed everything. And of course, very soon we're going to have these, by the end of this year, we're going to have all these all over the place. They're going to be domestic robots are going to be proliferating everywhere. I don't think Tesla are going to be making cars anymore. They're going to be making domestic robots, and that's going to be the focus. It's going to already we see that in Miami. We see that the whole time, robots operating on the streets, and this is a kind of one of the interesting graphs to show that in the past, last year, 2 years ago, 2024. People used ChatGPT for generating ideas. That's only the 6th most important use of it now. The most important use is as therapy or companionship. I mean, that's astonishing, absolutely astonishing. It's almost like we're in the world of her. And in fact, someone told me that her was set in the year 2025. I'm not sure that's the case or not, but we are in that world right now. People are relying increasingly on these things as a kind of almost like a companion. This is the most important graph that I'm going to show you today. Ethan Mollick, the guy who wrote the book on co-intelligence, he was part of this research, and this is his crude graph. Now, it might be crude, but this tells us an awful lot. Look at the blue mountain. Those not using AI. This is research with using sociologists, fundamentally rigorous research coming out of Harvard. And on the right-hand side, the green mountain, those who are using AI. You can see a difference of 40% in terms of the quality. 40%. I personally think that this is old-fashioned research. By now, ChatGPT 5.2 is probably improving to 80 to 100%. I think it's really making a huge difference. Now, if you think about this in terms of a 100-meter race, Usain Bolt normally used to win by a meter or a 2 in his races. What would it be for him to be 40 meters in front? That's what we're talking about. An incredible improvement, and not only for the quality, also for the speed and the quantity and so on and so on. Meanwhile, there's this professor from Harvard, and I used to teach at Harvard, and I'm not sure I would trust a Harvard professor too much, but he says, oh, don't worry, AI won't replace humans, but humans with AI will replace humans without AI. We've probably all heard of this. I'll come back to this later. Meanwhile, we are possibly already in the situation, the condition of artificial general intelligence, which means the stage when basically AI matches human intelligence in a whole range of different things, not just playing chess, but everything. And this is the thinking, for example, of Blaise Guiriakos, the brilliant guy from Google who wrote a book called What is Intelligence, that's been so significant. And he has the view is this. He says it's a bit like flying a plane. Okay, a bird flies. A bird is a biological entity and it flies. But a plane also flies. A plane is a mechanical entity, but it also flies. And you can use that model to refer to AI. The brain is a biological entity and is intelligent. AI is a mechanical entity, but it is also intelligent. Intelligence can operate on different substrates. And the question right now is, has it matched human intelligence? I personally think that it's exceeded that. If ChatGPT knows 10,000 times more than any human being, I think we're being wiped away by AI right now. And he also uses the plane as a further analogy to say, once the Wright brothers had got the first plane to take off, the rest, as it were, is history. So he thinks we're in the early stages of AGI. The question is ultimately, are we in the early stages of artificial architectural general intelligence as opposed to artificial AGI? This is Sam Altman with a design by Karim Rashid. I sent this to Karim Rashid and said, not as good as your designs, is it? And he said, no, it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful, which would seem to indicate we are at that situation right now. Let's just hear Sam Altman talking about his new Karim Rashid designed, supposedly Karim Rashid designed interior.
The living room, Karim went all in on curves and color here. The sofa almost looks like it's floating, and that pink light strip in the wall glows at night. The kitchen keeps the same vibe. The island is one continuous surface, and the appliances are all hidden.
But there was this other example, okay? Now, I don't know if you know this, I used to live in LA. There were two graduates of UCLA who graduated in architecture, right? No jobs out there, so they were enterprising. So they got hold of an ice cream van. They painted it pink, and they set up a company called Koolhaas, not spelled as it is here, as his name, but actually spelled Coolhaus, as in Bauhaus, Koolhaas. And it's now the most successful female-run ice cream company in the States. I wanted to see what would happen if we got Rem Koolhaas selling ice creams in from a pink ice cream van. Here we go.
Here you are, architecture in a cone. Yeah. Pleasure. One more coming right up. A little pistachio room. And that's finished. Enjoy. Amazing.
Let's this is the one more time. This is, I mean, his Dutch accent's pretty good, right?
Here you are, architecture in a cone. Yeah. Pleasure. One more coming right up. A little pistachio room. And that's finished. Enjoy. Amazing.
But as everyone's pointed out to me, Rem Koolhaas is not that nice and not that polite. So I don't think we've reached architectural general intelligence just yet. Okay, so the dark side of AI, this is the kind of Black Mirror side of things. This is where it gets a little bit scary, the black side here. I want to introduce this guy, Demis Hassabis, because he was one of two Nobel Prize winners, came out of the UK. Also a fellow graduate from the University of Cambridge. What a genius. He is the Einstein of our present day. Anyway, he was, and this movie, The Thinking Game, has got 30 million hits. It's only been out a month. Unbelievably good movie. It'll tell you everything about cutting edge research in AI. I really recommend this movie. But we go back, setting the scene for this, back in 1997, Garry Kasparov took on IBM's Deep Blue at chess. Nobody thought Garry Kasparov would lose. He's one of the greatest geniuses in the world of chess. But he lost. And he made this comment. We just have to understand that everything that we know how to do, machines will eventually do better than us. Except architecture, of course, because we are absolute geniuses, right? Okay, right. But then the real challenge came the game of Go, because Go is much more complex than chess in the sense that there are more potential moves in Go than there are atoms in the universe. There are more potential moves in Go than there are atoms in the universe. So they had to resort to the new learning systems of deep learning neural networks that are so recent. They only really hit the scene right before this. In fact, this event in 2016 is really the point where people sat up and paid attention to deep learning AI, because it was unbelievable. And what happened in here was basically Lee Sedol, the kind of equivalent of Gary Kasparov in the world of Go, took on AlphaGo, made by DeepMind, Demis Hassabis' company in London. Demis, of course, himself was actually a prodigy as a young kid at chess, so he was interested. But he used this to test out his systems. Something happened in this match that changed the world in many ways. This is what he says after game 2. Yesterday, I was surprised. That means that after game one, he was surprised. But today, after game 2, I am speechless. So why was he speechless? And he was speechless because of one particular move. There were several what they call slack moves where AI, it wasn't clear what it was doing, but it was really radically changing the game of Go. And this one, move 37, I can't get a cursor here, but anyway, here we are. This one, move 37 in game 2. That everyone thought this is a mistake, computer glitch, ridiculous. AI, no way is he going to beat Lisa. This is going to beat Lee Sedol. That was a genius move. And 100 moves later, these two stones on the left joined up with it and won the match. It was as though AI, AlphaGo, was thinking 100 moves ahead. It was completely trouncing the best human in the world. And even the commentators thought it was a mistake. This is I haven't shared the sound either, so I'm hoping that this is going to work. Let's just try.
The Google team was talking about is this kind of evaluation value? That's a very surprising.
But it's very surprising. So, oh, damn. Anyway, I clicked on too early. The next other guy says, I thought it was a mistake. I hope you can hear that thing. Never mind. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a mistake at all. Can I just check you are hearing the voice sound on these videos?
Yeah, we can hear it.
Okay, good. So anyway, after the match, Lee Sedol said, basically it showed us that we're conventional. We're not that creative. I don't think that was the significance of that match. I think the significance of the match was to show that AI could operate at a level way beyond humans. It's a bit like those of you who've got dogs, you know that dogs can smell or hear a bigger range of smells or sounds than we can. This is what AI can do. And once AI reaches an IQ of 1,500, as has been predicted for 2033, it'll be operating in a way that we simply don't understand. And what's more, and it's become clear that AI has become quite devious, it'll be trained on our data and trained on our deviousness. So it'll be super intelligent and devious. This is the problem. It'll be running rings around us. Okay, so something here. But that model was pretty basic compared to the next one, AlphaGo 0, which beat AlphaGo 100 games to 0, 100 games to 0. Clearly much superior. But what was so significant about this particular model is that it trained itself to play Go without being given the rules of Go. And that is pretty damn astonishing. But what is more astonishing, it was using reinforcement learning, was the rate at which it trained itself to play Go. It trained itself to play Go by playing 3.9 million games of Go over 3 days. And you think, well, that's a lot. But when you think about it, that really is a lot. That's 20 games of Go per second. This is a hummingbird. We see these in California the whole time. And admittedly, it's been slowed down, and you can see it beating its wings at 3 beats per second. Imagine 7 times that. I think that the writing was on the wall at this particular moment, and we didn't pay attention to it. Interestingly, it was this model, AlphaGo 0, that allowed Xcool to really push forward their generative AI models in the office. Now, Demis Hassabis says we're not interested in the aim of Go, we're just interested in developing systems that are going to help the rest of the world. In 2024, he won the Nobel Prize with his team, John Jumper, for basically AlphaFold, an extension of that where they solved the whole question of how do you predict the structure of proteins. Absolutely astonishing bit of scientific research. They're now working on cancer. this guy is a genius. He is going to change the world. He is the Einstein of our time. So the trouble is that the next kind of big breakthrough in many ways was the ChatGPT moment. Don't underestimate this particular moment, because those of us working in the field have been frustrated because no one was paying attention to AI. And we were saying, this is going to be incredible. But nobody quite predicted that ChatGPT would do what it was trained to do, because basically it was doing what AlphaGo Zero was doing. It was training itself to do things. It was picking up, learning how to do things without being trained to do it. It could learn to write code. It learned to translate languages. It wasn't trained to do it, and yet it could do these things. These are called emergent capabilities. What's interesting about these large language models? That's the big model behind ChatGPT. They're called GPT. In this case, it's GPT-4. They're actually not very sophisticated in terms of the computation. There's about 200 lines of code. But what is curious is the more data on which you train these things, the more they start displaying these weird emergent capabilities. And nobody knows how they do these things. Nobody knows, because we don't know how the brain works either. But anyway, they are doing this stuff, and it gets a bit unnerving. At this stage, people started panicking, and there was this Yuval Harari, first of all, he points out that AI has hacked the operating system of human civilization. It's worked out how to write, and once you can write, you've got a tremendous authority, because you can persuade other people to do things. Well, he wrote this back in 2023, and I thought, well, maybe, but for sure it's learned how to design. This is Midjourney. In this prompt, I in the old days, I'd put about 70 words into my prompts, but I only put like a very short reference to architecture. In this case, ultra contemporary minimalist apartment block in Hong Kong. That's all I said. And I didn't specify the form, anything else, the colors. It was all generated by Midjourney. Midjourney can design. What's more, we're getting to see in some of these systems the capacity for what we call intuitive physics. It understands how the physics of the world work increasingly. Obviously we do, but it's now matching that to the point where you almost can't tell the difference. It knows what it looks like for someone to walk up the steps. This is actually a hugely significant moment when you can show someone walking up steps. So AI is getting better and better and better. This was about 6 months ago, so it's not so special now. Anyway, just recently, Harari came up with this comment, backing up his earlier point about once you can write, you've got tremendous control. Here we go.
There was an experiment when OpenAI developed GPT-4, like 2 years ago. They wanted to test what can this thing do. So they gave it a task to solve CAPTCHA puzzles. The CAPTCHA puzzles, like when you go online and you want to access your bank or whatever, and they have this riddle that you have to solve, an image that you have to say what are the twisted words and then letters to make sure you are not a robot. GPT-4 could not solve the CAPTCHA. But what GPT-4 did, it accessed TaskRabbit, which is an online site where you can hire humans to do different things for you. And it asked a human to solve the CAPTCHA for it. Mm-hmm. Now, the human got suspicious. The human asked, why do you need somebody to solve CAPTCHA for you? Are you a robot? It asked directly, are you a robot? And GPT-4 answered, no, I'm not a robot. I have a vision impairment, which is why I can't solve the CAPTCHA, so I need your help.
This is terrifying. This is terrifying. Just imagine what it's going to be like in the future. Already it's blackmailing us. Already it's been devious. It's going to be very challenging in the future. This unnerved everybody to the point that the Future of Life organization issued a letter telling everyone, please, and asking everyone, please slow down developing these large language models bigger than GPT-4 until we know what the hell is going on. Everybody signed, including Elon Musk. This had no impact at all. I used to be a runner, and I can tell you that you stand no chance. It's like asking the leader in the Olympic marathon, please slow down. Of course that person's not going to slow down because all the competitors are going to catch up. So this letter was absolutely useless and futile, and Elon Musk, on the basis of that, decides to jump ship. And he now, like everyone else, is developing this supercomputer. We're now in a situation where all these sort of safety protocols have disappeared. No one's concerned about that. The environment, no one's concerned. There's this race to develop super intelligence, and Elon Musk and others it's an arms race almost in some senses. So in a sense, this is my commentary on where we are right now. It is as though we are on a runaway train with no brakes, getting faster and faster. And jobs. Okay. Bill Gates says the two-day working week is coming as soon as AI takes over most human jobs. Right. Well, okay. I mean, I don't think it's going to be an even 2-day working week. I'm based in Miami, where David Beckham set up this new team into Miami. Messi plays for them. If I were Beckham, I wouldn't say to Messi, you can only play 2 days a week. I'd want him every 5 days a week. So it's not going to be like that. But then we were reassured by this professor from the Harvard Business School. Don't worry. AI won't replace humans, but humans with AI will replace humans without AI. How often have we heard this refrain? And it is ridiculous because it is completely wrong. And it's wrong basically because of precisely the research that he was involved in. In other words, this research, it can produce material 40% better. I think 80% better now. No, the green mountain is sliding to the right as the technology improves. But it also improves not only that, but the speed and the quantity of it. Just take the speed. If you could produce things 25% faster, that means that 4 people using AI can achieve as much in the same time as 5 people not using AI. That is straightforward mathematics. That means, quite simply, AI will replace humans because 4 humans with AI will replace 5 without AI. It's just straight mathematics. And the problem I think we've had is to think that white collar workers were the safest, that that doctors, that lawyers, that architects, engineers were safest. It was the blue collar workers, the guys in the factory who were at risk, because we've all seen these Tesla factories with no human in sight. But the point is, once you take a robot out of a controlled condition, it is pretty clumsy. It is pretty clumsy. Whereas what's been happening is AI's been racing ahead. AI is writing code, meaning all those AI companies are just downsizing because they don't need so many humans anymore. And this is because of what is known as Moravec's paradox, that basically what we're good at, like catching a ball, AI is not very good at. But what AI is good at, like knowing 10,000 times more than any human being and coming up with the answer in 2 seconds, we're not so good at. So, except the problem is that AI robotics is improving. This is, in a sense, an example of what we can call spatial intelligence. It's catching a ball. So, this is my message for architects. What architects need to design right now is not another building, but the very future of their profession. Just briefly, I want to quickly mention education because I'm a professor. Bill Gates says that AI will replace doctors and teachers within 10 years, but not professors, right? He's talking about teachers and not medical doctors. We're talking about, what about PhDs? They won't be replaced, will they? I'm not so sure. I mean, this is really the challenge right now. How do we prepare students for a future when we don't even know what that future is going to be? How do we? And we've got no clue what the architectural practice of the future is going to look like. I mean, will we even need to train students for so many years? Will we even need to have so many students because we won't need so many architects? If we only need half the number of students, and if they only need to study for half the amount of time, that means that we only need 25% of the amount of professors for the future. And this has become a real issue in the world of education. Let me just show you this.
I did the whole project using GPT 4.1 in Midjourney, and Prof didn't even realize. Wow. Could you see his face?
AI is a bubble. Yeah. Stop this nonsense and use your brains.
I always wanted to be an architect, but I wasn't sure I could draw.
I really hope we can keep control.
I love architecture theory. I love what we do with our passion and knowledge.
Yeah.
We are setting new rules, and architecture shall be taught differently.
AI is a bubble, Tice, just only hype. Please open the Newford and let's review today's lesson about the right furniture size.
We have no future. I found a new tool that can swap materials from buildings.
Yeah.
That is called Photoshop. I used Formus. AI, so much control. You should try. Whether you want to accept it or not, embrace the change. Now we can focus on the human side of architecture pride, shedding old prejudices and outdated views. It's a new era, but it demands strong foundations. Our talent and architectural judgment won't be replaced by AI, but maybe most people won't appreciate it. We need to move fast.
Now, I design beyond my limits. Such an amazing time to learn architecture. You will not only be part of a revolution, you will set the rules of the game for the next decade.
Produced by Carl Spaniel. Now, when it first came out 6 months ago, nobody thought it was AI, but of course, it's AI generated, and now we all know. We can't really tell the difference. I teach a course on a theory of AI at FIU, Florida International University in Miami, along with the Doctor of Design program that I run. I basically don't ask my students to write essays anymore. What's the point? They will use ChatGPT to go and generate it. So what I do is I ask them to use as much as AI as possible to produce a video as a kind of critique of their contemporary world. And I want to just show you quickly something that two of my students did last year, where they basically got AI to generate discussion between Joe Rogan and Elon Musk, and they fed in the manuscript of my book, my forthcoming book, and they basically, Joe Rogan and Elon Musk are talking about AI and quoting from my book. Let's just see this.
Elon, man, great to have you back on the show. Let's dive right into it. Artificial intelligence. You've called it a double-edged sword, right? Potential savior, but also humanity's demon. What's your perspective now?
Thanks, Joe. Yes, I'd say we're summoning the demon, but it's more nuanced. AI is already transforming everything. Take how Neil Leach describes it. AI isn't just about robots. It's an invisible force in our daily lives, controlling algorithms that feed us ads and even runs our phones.
That's wild, man. So AI is like this silent invader. But Neil also talks about this idea of extended intelligence where AI enhances us, not replaces us. Isn't that what you're trying to do with Neuralink?
Exactly. Neuralink aims to close the loop between human intelligence and machine intelligence. The goal is synergy. Neil Leach discusses this concept of humans as natural-born cyborgs adapting to technology to become superhuman. It's all about augmenting human capabilities.
Yeah, but the dangers...
Okay, let's move on finally. So, but don't panic. I don't think in the end we should panic. Sure, offices are going to shrink. They are going to shrink. At the same time, there are going to be huge advances in science and technology. You know, I'm absolutely convinced that cancer will be solved in the next 2 years, if not before. You know, there are going to be huge improvements. It will be our new normal. This will be our new normal. And we'll get used to it. The whole point about humans is we're so incredibly good at adaptation. That's why we're natural-born cyborgs, to quote from Andy Clark's book. We very quickly adapt to these things. We just change, we shift, and we get used to the whole world. I don't know if anyone can even remember what it was like before we had cell phones. Well, I can vaguely remember it, sort of vaguely. It doesn't seem like real. I can remember I used to go around London with an A to Z book of maps, trying to find my way around. I didn't use GPS. That's all in the past. We've forgotten about it, and we will forget what it was like in 2026 when we all had jobs and so on, and we will get used to this new normal. If I can just use one example to argue my point. If 40 years ago, someone has said to me, in 40 years' time, most marriages would end in divorce, I would throw up my hands in horror. I'd say, oh my God, it's the end of the world. What are we going to do? But the fact is that more than 50% of marriages do end in divorce in certain countries. Apparently in Russia, 75% of marriages end in divorce. And we are quite okay with that. We are also going to be quite okay with our new normal, shrinking offices and much better science. So I'm going to finish off on a very British note. Keep calm and carry on. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil, so much for the presentation. It's so good to hear you again. We heard you during the World Architecture Festival, and it's such a pleasure to see you again and always having so insightful thoughts.
Yeah, well, thank you for inviting me. It's a shame we didn't meet when you were here in Miami, but yeah.
Well, since one of the last topics you were talking about was education, I'm going to start with an education question. Someone asked here, Architectural education is under increasing pressure to adapt to rapid technological, cultural, and environmental shifts. In this context, which aspects of traditional architectural education do you think have become obsolete or even counterproductive? And what knowledge, skills, or ways of thinking should schools prioritize in order to prepare students for the realities of contemporary practice?
Well, I think, basic drawing skills and things are not obsolete. They need to find out about how to draw things first of all. But, I think the real problem right now is attitudes to AI. I'm on a couple of committees where basically people are saying, how do we control this AI in the classroom? And, it's ridiculous in some sense. It's a bit like what happened a few years ago with the world with calculators. We have to ban calculators from the maths exam. Well, once you've got calculators, it is absolutely stupid not to use them, and you wouldn't trust a human to do long division anymore. And the same thing happens with AI. What we're discovering is AI can do things that we just can't do. A few months ago, one of my colleagues asked me to kind of to endorse his book, right? And I said, well, yes, I'm really busy now, but I'll do it. Eventually he said, listen, I need it today. I need it today. So I said, well, just run it through ChatGPT, get a paragraph summary of the book and tell me. And so he did it. 2 seconds later, bam. And I said, is that any good? He said, spot on. Now, I then took it and wrote this endorsement and whatever else. I wouldn't trust a human being anymore. I wouldn't trust a human being to summarize a book. It would take them 2 weeks, and I'm not sure that I would trust it. Same with long division. Exactly the same. We need to embrace these technologies. They will be there. We are producing students to work in the world of AI, and we cannot deny them access to these things. So I'm completely with Ethan Mollick. His book, Co-Intelligence, is one of the important manifestos about this. We need to learn to work with AI. The way I work with it is I have a discussion with ChatGPT 5.2. I'm asking it questions just as a student might ask its professor questions, and I'm getting incredible feedback. And I'm realizing, frankly, that I'm not as good as I thought I was. And it's really quite disturbing. About 6 months ago, I wrote something and I thought, I've published 50 books. And I thought, that's genius. You're so good. You're so good, Neil. And then I checked it out on ChatGPT and it came up with something that was, not only did it point out things I'd overlooked, but it was absolutely grammatically perfect and the spelling was perfect. And at that point, I thought, holy shit, I'm obsolete. But let's keep quiet about it because no one's going to find out for about 10 years. Then on Instagram, there was a kind of report a few weeks later. These are 1,000 jobs, and the 4 jobs most likely to be taken up by AI. Number 4 was out of the 1,000. Number 4 was writing. Writers effectively obsolete. So, I think we're in this world. We need to embrace AI. There's no point denying it. There's no point that stupid idiot showing us Neufert, like in that video. The world is changing. We must adapt and go with it. And if you want to find out how to survive in this world, look at Tim Fu, look at Mariana Cabuchera, these kind of people who are really pushing in this new world and opening up this new set of opportunities. If you resist it, you will be sleepwalking into oblivion. There was one comment made when I first wrote about this. One guy in the kind of the comments thing said, "There's not a single AI on the market that can possibly match my ingenuity and creativity." That guy's going to be the first to go. This guy's going to be the first to go. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Do you feel also that like the resistance in universities nowadays compared to like 3 or 4 years ago is like smaller, or like is it becoming better?
Well,
like people are accepting it more?
Well, I mean, I think history is repeating itself. I studied at the University of Cambridge. We had a certain professor there. I will mention no names, but he banned the computer from the studio, right? All the smart students would use the computer, then they would do these hand-drawn overlays and pretend it was all done by hand. And all the bad students would just draw it by hand. When they graduated, the students who couldn't use computers were unemployable. They were unemployable. My advice to students of today is to get up and to speed with all these things. The trouble is we don't know quite where it's going. It's kind of like chaos at the moment. I gave a talk in Milan with some guys from MVRDV and from Big, And I was asking, what are they using? And said, well, we don't know. We're just every week something new comes onto the marketplace, and we're just trying it out. It's almost like the only platform that's really succeeding at the moment is Xfigura, which almost makes it worse because it's giving you access to all these things. I had thought that we'd kind of get to a situation whereby we'd lock into one platform or another, Xcool or Autodesk or something, and just have a singular pipeline. But at the moment, it seems to be chaos. But it's important to really become familiar to this and to learn how to learn more than anything else, because the world is absolutely changing, and we can't, if we stay as we are, we'll just become dinosaurs.
The next question, I think it makes sense with what you're saying, but as AI becomes more present in design decision making, how should architects rethink authorship, creativity, and responsibility?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a kind of, we do a lot of these things on Digital Future. We had a whole series on copyright issues. There's a lot of misunderstanding about copyright. It's really frustrating at the moment. I mean, all these, even the lawyers have got no clue. And we had a session with intellectual property lawyers who really experts from Harvard and MIT. There's a lot of misunderstanding about that. Creativity. I'm very controversial here. I don't think we're half as creative as we think we are. And those people who said that AI isn't, well, I don't even know I want to use the word creativity. It's certainly innovative. I am constantly shocked by what is generated by AI. We need to renegotiate all these things. These are things that we thought we knew. And I think it's now challenging that. It's challenging in some ways also who we are as individuals. That comment about AlphaGo, we're not as, at least at Olmet, what we thought was creative is pretty conventional. I personally think that what we're beginning to realize is the world of AI and the world of neuroscience is very, very closely connected. And Demis Hassabis actually did a PhD in neuroscience before going into the world of AI. And so an AI is based on the brain, on kind of loosely modeled on the neural networks of the brain. I think the corollary is also true. We will discover more about ourselves in the mirror of AI. We'll discover who we are, and we are discovering already. And I think we need to sort of ratchet down some of the kind of belief in ourselves. A lot of people sort of judge AI and say, well, it's not conscious, is it? It's not as good as us. Well, do we need to be conscious? If my toaster makes good toast, I don't care if it's conscious or not. There's a lot of arguments. Yuval Harari has some similar arguments. We need to step down from our anthropocentric pedestal and recognize there's something out there that is frankly superior.
There's a question from Kevin Doan. Dear Professor Neil, as AI-driven digital twins begin to evolve from passive simulations into active forms of designing intelligence, and as the physical world gradually reverts to nature while human existence shifts deeper into digital space, are we still designing the future for human life? Or are we perhaps unintentionally designing it for the intelligent systems that will eventually think, decide, and operate in our place?
Okay, who was it said that? We're becoming more like robots, and robots are becoming more like us. I think that was, I forget, as it was Asimov. I forget now exactly. But I mean, just to clarify one thing, I think that the digital twins, what that's being used. The two understandings of different digital twins. What is just simply a digital model? Well, that's no good. What a real digital twin is something is monitoring in real time what's happening in the world outside. Now, that has been applied in China, increasingly elsewhere in the world. There's a company called CityBrain in China that's using it to sort out traffic, and it's really, really working. But it's not designing as such. It's been used to monitor that kind of world. For sure, we're going to see, new patterns. I mean, I know this because I've been writing about it. But the whole world of agentic AI is going to transform everything. The question is, do we maybe remain in charge? To some extent, for the moment, we remain in charge because we are controlling these systems. But at one point, they're going to become totally autonomous, and it's going to be a different kind of world. I think we're designing for humans, but for humans in a world that is radically changing on a day-by-day basis, who knows what's going to happen? Nobody knows. If you ask the experts like Jeffrey Hinton what's going to happen, they don't know. But we must at least, as architects, step beyond our kind of obsession with tools to see this bigger picture of a world that is continually changing.
Interesting. And I think we have time for only one more question. And I think this is something that really concerns lots of architects when it comes to AI. Ditya says, the most common question architects are facing right now from clients are like, AI can generate them the whole designs. So what's the need of an architect? Or AI can generate designs for free or less cost. Then why the need to put more money into on architects? So can you comment on this?
You know, I think this is why I say what we need to design right now is not another building, but the way in which we operate as a profession. I think there are possibilities out there. You know, in the dark side, there's also a white circle, as it were. And let me say one thing. You know, the moment we are a kind of the bottom of the pecking order in terms of profession. We get paid the least. You know, the engineer gets paid more, and the quantity surveyor and whatever, and eventually the top is the client and the developer, right? They're the ones. But actually, with AI, we could change that. We could change that. We could be developers, and it's going to make it so much easier. The first thing we go to ChatGPT and say, "How do I become a developer? Give me 10 rules." And you go, boom, boom, boom. It'll tell you exactly, and this new software will allow you to do that. Louis Barragan was a developer. And if he was a developer, then we all can become developers. So we can reinvent who we are. The second thing, you know, I think that what architects have got is, and you know, most architects think, okay, what I got to do is to design a building more sexy than Zaha. No, that's not what they got to do. It's what they got to rethink the whole logic of how things operate. Now, what we can do as architects, which is kind of interesting, I don't know if any other profession, any other discipline does this, but we do diagrams. We visualize what we're talking about with diagrams, and it actually gives us a huge advantage. You know, sometimes I'm talking about some complex system that I can visualize totally, and those in other disciplines just don't see it at all. And that's what we can do, right? So TED Talks are invented by architects. I think Instagram was. Certainly Digital Futures was. We can reimagine the world. So we have to use our architectural imaginations, not to design sexy forms, but to think about how the world can operate differently. Look at what Tim Fu's doing. Look at what Mariana Cabachara is doing. They are reinventing what it is to be an architect. And frankly, you know, I don't even know if the term architect means any much anymore, but we have to move forward and really challenge the world and use our ingenuity, our imaginations. Copying Zaha is not imagination, but rethinking the way architects operate is imagination. So that's really what we've got to do. We've got to not design a new building, design the whole future of our discipline and profession, and also education.
That's really inspiring. Well, Neil, thank you so much for your time, for replying all these questions. And now, Rafaela,
Oops. So thank you so much, Amanda, for moderating today's conversations. And a big thank you to Ken, Mai, and also Neil for closing our webinar week. It was very, very special to have you to wrap everything up and with such thoughtful and forward-looking perspectives. And it's been incredibly inspiring to spend this week discussing how architecture continues to evolve through social responsibility, innovation in construction, strategic thinking, and research-driven practice. Before we wrap up, I'd like to remind you that our webinars are a monthly initiative at Architecture Hunter, and we'll continue this series in February with a brand new theme, Radical Sustainability, Building for a Living Planet. And we hope you join us again next month for this next chapter of conversation. So thank you all for being with us today and throughout the whole week. And we'll look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye.
Thank you, Neil. Bye.
Thanks.